So today we're going to take a look at tips for generating thesis statements. So what exactly is a thesis? Well, it's a statement or statements expressing an argument in an essay. It tells the reader what to expect from the rest of the paper, and it directly answers the question asked of you. A thesis also does the following. It makes a claim that others might dispute. In other words, it's an argument. It tells the reader how you interpret the significance of the subject matter under discussion, and it's usually found somewhere in the first part of the essay. I would say the first third. It's usually within the first two paragraphs. So when is the thesis needed? Well, if you are asked to explain or discuss, that's more of something that you would find in a report. When you are presenting an argument, or you need to analyze something, you need a thesis. For interpretation, demonstrate cause and effect, compare and contrast, or support or defend an opinion. So how do you begin writing a thesis? Well, there's two bits of information that you need. The first thing you need to do is collect evidence or to brainstorm ideas to educate yourself about the topic and the issues. The next thing you have to do is to understand the question being asked. What is it that your teacher wants you to know about this and wants you to answer? Another thing that you'll need to know is to define or explain key terms or ideas. If you're doing an essay on euthanasia, euthanasia is different from mercy killing, and it's important to understand the difference between those terms and those concepts. So how will you generate a thesis? Well, there's three ways we're going to look at. The first way is to look for relationships between facts. The second is the use of a graphic organizer. And the third is the use of focus questions. So let's take a look at relationships between facts. Probably one of the most common ways is to take a look at it from the point of view of a chart. In this case, we're looking at pros and cons. You can look for and against, point and counterpoint, any number of ways. The topic that we're going to take a look at is the issue of gun control. And what we're looking at here with the pro and con chart, we're looking at general brainstorming, statements that people have made for and against, or pro and con towards the issue of gun control. What you would do with this, usually if the pro and con chart, you would see where the majority of the information is, or the preponderance of information. Another thing that you could do is which arguments tend to make the most sense, and where can you find the proof to support that. By choosing that, you've got a rough idea of where you're going to go with your essay. Let's take a look at this. This is some standard brainstorming and research in the form of a mind map. What you would do looking at this is you would look for relationships between ideas. So right off the bat, we can see a relationship between gun laws in Canada and a comparison with the United States. Are there other relationships that we can look at with this? Well, gun laws in Canada and other countries in gun control. Since we're on the topic of comparing countries, here's an ideal one to take a look at. And then the obvious one is comparing the United States to other countries. Are there other relationships that you would be able to see on this? Well, how about the idea of the need for guns and for alternatives? Why are guns so deadly, and the need for guns might be another one that you could link to. The gun industry in the United States and the need for guns is something else. So now what we're going to be focusing on, not just the idea of gun control, but the idea of the very need for firearms. And then why are guns so deadly, and the gun industry is another relation of ideas. By looking at these relations of ideas, it may generate some ideas for yourselves in terms of what you need for a working thesis. The last one we're going to take a look at is focus questions. So what are focus questions? A question that helps you generate questions about your topic. They frame or focus the direction your essay will take, and they also narrow down the scale or size of your research. Good focus questions do the following. They usually have who, what, where, when, or why. and how in order to avoid yes or no answers. The last thing you want is a yes or no answer with a thesis. They make reference to the initial topic, and they take into account other opinions that you have formed on the topic. So if you have some preconceived ideas, such as I'm for this or I'm against this, a focus question will take that into account. Here's some sample focus questions on the issue of gun control. How does gun control reduce violence? Why does gun control work in some countries and not in others? What exactly is the relationship between guns and violence? Answering those will give you an idea of a working thesis, and you need to answer them with an idea or an opinion in mind in terms of where you want to go with your essay. Once you do this, and the important thing to keep in mind about writing an essay and thinking through a thesis is that it is a thinking process. You have to really, really take the time to consider what the relationship between ideas is. And this can take a long time. It's hard work. Some thesis statements, you may need to start considering them about the time that you get your essay assignment. They're not things that you can do overnight. Others are remarkably easy, and it really depends on not just the topic that you're looking at, but how much you know about the topic. Writing an essay is a process, and that process is something that will need to be refined. Taking the time to think about what you want to do with your essay and what you want to do with your thesis statement is definitely something to focus on. The next podcast, we're going to be looking at ways of refining your thesis and making it far more effective. Take care.